The alumni versus the team game earlier today, and big crowd for the alums there. It was really fun. I'd never been a part of that before, and just so much energy. I think it's great for the current team to see how much spirit the alums have and how close they are. And I want to thank Sam and Marin and really all of Princeton volleyball for continuing to remember and honor my brother Morgan. Morgan grew up in Santa Monica, as most of you know. He, I think, came to volleyball a little bit late, but he played at Santa Monica High School, or Samo High, with the likes of Mike Seeley, who's here tonight. And so that helped him with his competitiveness, and he got good, and with his good grades and volleyball skills, he set his sights on Princeton. And you would think going off to play at a school that's on the East Coast, and that it would be pretty isolating for the rest of the family. We wouldn't get to see him much or hear much about it, but exactly the opposite was true. Princeton volleyball has been a family affair since day one for us. I got to, thanks to Coach Glenn Nelson, I got to tell Morgan that he was admitted to Princeton, which was a pretty neat thing to call him up and be able to tell him that. We went to a lot of games. We went to the Ivy League championships. I still remember one at New Haven, where my brother Clinton and I were both there, and Morgan had so much energy left after the game that we were wrestling on the couch and in the hotel room, broke one of the arms off and had to figure out how to report that back to the hotel. We were able to host the team out at I think the Route 1 diner a couple times, and we were amazed at how much some of the men's volleyball players could put away. It was an expensive meal, but continuing on with after Glenn stopped coaching, Sam came on board. He took the time to come up to New York City when our whole family was there at an event that was honoring Morgan in the city, and just spent that time with us, met us. And I think what he does, looking back at Princeton's roots, is really incredible. I mean, just keeping that continuity, and we feel that from the family perspective. When my daughter Morgan was looking at schools, we stopped by to see Sam in his office in Dillon Gym, and he put the same hard sell recruiting pitch on her that I think he puts on all the players, even though she's not a volleyball player. And it was really neat to see that. And Princeton volleyball, I mean, it's a connection not just to the school and a place, but to a living, breathing, ever-growing group of people that we get to experience at events like this, the alumni game, every time the school comes out to California, and we get the newsletters and the award in Morgan's name that's given to a men's player every year. It's this connection that is so meaningful to me, to our whole family. It just keeps his spirit alive, so we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Different than I expected. So I came in, my GPS told me to come up Sunset, I didn't. Came on San Vicente, cut through Bristol. And I realized that I hadn't been driving on Bristol since I was with Morgan back in the day. So I drove at probably 35 miles per hour. Morgan used to like driving it a little bit faster than that. Carl Arena, you already know that, so that's not a big secret. But I figured, you know, when they asked me to come speak, sure, I'll come say a couple things. And it's pulling heartstrings, and I didn't expect that. You know, it's been 26 years since he was gone. But when I hear people talking about him in this venue, I can only help but feel gratitude and appreciation. I actually knew him. And I got to meet him, and we discovered volleyball together. You know, and it's blowing me away how special that is. That from 8th grade on, this is the guy that you go to the open gym and play, you go to the beach and play. We had this passion we discovered together. somebody that you could go break into the local junior high and set up a net. Back then, it wasn't called a misdemeanor; it was actually passion. So you were allowed to go break into local buildings and put up a net and play. And we used to do that kind of stuff. And Morgan was the most humble, fun-loving, authentic human being I've ever met, and that hasn't changed. I used to tell the story that, you know, we're in 10th grade, it's a Saturday, you want to go to the beach and hang out, so you call Morgan, let's go to the beach. And he says, I can't. I got to stay home and clean the fish pond. And you're like, oh, cool, I'll be right there. Because spending any time with him was going to be way more fun than anything else you could do. So he was just a really amazing, unique human being. I am honored to have known him, and it's really hitting me strangely to feel that right now, having not thought about that in a long time. So thank you guys for honoring Morgan and everything he means and continues to mean to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Your eyesight starts to go, so I need the slightly larger format version to see my notes here. But it's really just great to see so many of you here tonight and so many representatives of Princeton volleyball or people who are connected to Princeton volleyball in some way. And just thank you all for coming out. I know it means a lot to the McKinzies. It means a lot to those of us who are part of the program as well. A couple of people have talked a little bit about Morgan and who he was, how he was, and I just want to observe that he's still bringing us together after 25 years. We're still finding reasons to connect because of Morgan. But maybe I can share a bit of color from my own experiences with Morgan. I would start with, he was a heck of a volleyball player. So he could pass, he could block, he could play defense, and he could crush cross court as well as anybody on the current team. He could bang. And he was a heck of a player. When he was a freshman and a sophomore, we were pretty thin. We literally had 7 guys by the end of his freshman year. So in Coach Nelson's grand strategy, basically every day at practice, we would split the team, and he would send Morgan and Trevor on one side, and then Coach Nelson would set, and I would play oppo on the other side, and that was the way he would even it out. And then he'd put the rest of the guys out there and fill it in with whatever Chuckies he could find in the gym to get us 12 people so we could actually scrimmage. So a scrimmage was with Coach Nelson setting me. So Trevor and I had trouble connecting because it wasn't until matches that he actually got to set with me in a match situation. But that was just a sense of the kind of player he was. He instantly played. I don't think he ever came off the court. He was also indestructible. We saw Morgan sprain an ankle. We saw him dislocate fingers. We saw him dive into the stands, dive into walls, never came off the court, never complained, never uttered a word of complaint. The guy was strong as an ox and just worked as hard and was as indestructible as anyone. And it's just great to be a part of that and see his commitment to the game. But I think it was off the court that he was really special. He was a fierce and loyal friend. He was committed to ROTC and to flying and to his family. He was independent, he was fun-loving, and he was totally goofy with this totally irreverent streak. He had an ant farm. He just was a complete goofball. And he owned it completely. He didn't care what other people thought about him. And that's what made him, as Mike said, so authentic and just such an incredible guy to be around, because he just had no pretense about him at all. And just, I still think about the impish smile he would have when he'd be up to something, because he was a bit of a practical joker. I see Dave Hunter back there laughing because he remembers the same thing. You know, one other story about Morgan that I think reveals a little bit more about him, which is, some of you have seen the sort of archival footage of the proverbial Vano dudes. You've seen the shot from the back, and Brian Bays, the Harvard coach, is there. You can boo now if you want, but there's a number of the old guard are in the van and they're playing the name game, and Morgan's filming all of this. And he shot that video for Trevor Brazier. He shot that video, and where's Trevor? Somewhere out here. Trevor was his classmate, and he shot that video, if I remember correctly, Trevor, to give to you. And for those of you who weren't born in 1992, let me explain what making a video used to look like. There was no iPhones, there was no YouTube. You had to put something the size of a suitcase on your shoulder that weighed like 20 pounds and stick it in people's faces to get video footage. Then you had to take this thing called a cassette out that was like the size of a laptop. And that was an actual physical film, and you couldn't edit it unless you had an editing room, so you kind of had one take to do everything. And then you had to take that giant cassette and ship it to Central America, where Trevor was on his mission. Now, it wasn't a secret mission, he was on a Mormon mission, but Trevor was down in Central America, and Morgan was concerned that Trevor was missing out. He was missing out on the great times. And any one of us could have gone to the trouble to make that video. right? It was a major hassle, I'm sure. It took a lot of time. But Morgan was the one who went and did it. And I think that speaks volumes about the kind of guy he was and the kind of friend he was. And then I just want to close in talking about Morgan, just to talk a word about his family. So I'm going to embarrass Rena and Carl a little bit. So a few weeks after Morgan's death, I had the opportunity to come up to pay a visit with Rena and Carl. And now that I'm the father of a son who's about Morgan's age, who's now at Princeton, I can really connect so much better with what they were probably experiencing at that time. And I show up, and I'm there thinking I'm there to console them. And instead, it was the other way around. The strength and the grace that they had in that moment and what they offered to not just me, but to all of us who were grieving at that time was really just incredible. And it's still an example that resonates with me and inspires me 25 plus years later. It also shows me a lot about where Morgan came from and for his family. So thank you, Carl and Rena. So I want to transition to talking a little bit about the Morgan McKinzie Endowment and the endowment that we put together for Princeton's men's program. But first, I want to point out we have a Morgan McKinzie Award that Sam referred to, and we have quite a number of prior winners here in the audience. So I can get a show of hands of the former Morgan McKinzie Award winners who are in the audience. Just put your hands up. Okay.
We need a photo. We need a photo of them or something.
When I'm done, you guys are due up here for a photo of all of us so that we can actually put that into the newsletter, because I think it's probably the biggest gathering we have ever had and probably will ever have of the award winners. So thank you guys for coming. So some of you know that we've got this endowment. It's named after Morgan. And maybe it's worth sharing just a little bit of history on that so I don't go on too long here. But you have to go back in time to 2010. So Coach Nelson, the father of the volleyball program, had left recently. Sam was brand new to the program. And Sabrina was just getting back in, I think, on the women's side just at that point. And we had the financial crisis. The university was cutting funding left and right. And the program had just lost an NCAA grant that was funding something like 50% of the operating expenses of the program. So Sam was in a really tough spot, and the program was in real trouble. And Sam and Sabrina did a lot of work and continue to do a lot of work to raise money to kind of find a way to squeak by and get by from an operating standpoint. And they were very creative in coming up with all kinds of ways of raising money. But they still were in a hole. And so a few of us alums put together an endowment and named it for Morgan to help secure the financial future of the program. But part of it was also to send a message to the university. We were really concerned about the level of the support the school was going to have for the program. And so we used that to signal how strong the alums supported Princeton men's volleyball. And we went and talked to the AD and made sure that they understood the degree of support that we had and that they also supported us. So thanks to Sam's hard work and leadership, the program made it through that existential crisis, and we have more support now from the administration than we've ever had, which is terrific. I think Sam, round of applause for Sam, please. And you might argue the program is thriving. They didn't do so well against the alums today, but they beat Stanford. So round of applause for the guys. Well done. Congratulations. The alums have taken a poll, and we've kindly requested that Sam never schedule them again so we can remain undefeated all time against Stanford. And Sam can continue to use that in recruiting and maintain bragging rights every time we see fellow Stanford alums that we can basically trash talk with. So the program is thriving, and why am I up here talking about the endowment and what we're trying to do? Well, we think we can do more to strengthen the program. And about a year ago, I started talking to Sam about what was the next leg in the journey. So we'd secured the foundation. What could we do with the endowment? And he didn't hesitate. He said, we need a full-time assistant coach. And I trust Sam, but I'm also pretty anal. So I went and did the research. I looked at every single Division I men's volleyball program and said, how many full-time coaches do they have? How many full-time coaches, how many Division I teams do you think there are that has one full-time coach in men's volleyball? There's one. It's Princeton. There are 4 teams that have 2 full-time coaches. So we are joining the likes of Harvard, St. Francis, IPFW, and Charleston if we actually have 2 coaches. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I'm not sure the Crimson, the Running Monks, the Mastodons, and whatever the heck Charleston's mascot is the company we want to keep. So, let's at least get to that level. But the other 20-some programs in Division I actually have at least 3 coaches. So we are undermanned. And Sam's been really creative in getting Pat involved on a temporary basis so that we have an assistant coach that can help Sam, but also more importantly can help with player development, with our competitiveness in practices and matches, but also and importantly with recruiting, which takes a lot of manpower. And so Pat, thank you for joining us, at least on a temporary basis. Now, we did have conversations with the university and said, hey, would you guys be ready to spring for this? And Molly Marcoux is an old classmate of mine. That comes in handy sometimes. She's the athletic director. We talked with her, and she was pretty blunt. She said, look, over the last 10 years, we've dramatically increased the support for the men's and women's program. We've gone from 1 coach to 3 coaches. We've added recruiting slots. We're tapped out. So if you want to make a difference and you want to get an assistant coach, you're going to have to find a way to do it yourselves, at least in the next 5 years. Okay, pretty clear. So we then checked into what the policy is, and we can't hire an assistant coach unless we have it endowed. Unless we have the endowment in hand, in pledges at least, to cover the cost of the coach, they won't allow us to hire a permanent position because they want it funded in perpetuity. So that's our task, and the asking number from them is $1 million that we need to raise. Now, that may seem like a daunting challenge because we raised only about $100,000, a little over $100,000 in TAG this year, which is the Tiger Athletic Giving Day, and the team did a great job raising that money. Field hockey never knew what hit him. Thank you, guys. And a real shout out to Sam, Sabrina, and the team on that. Really, by winning our category, I think we raised like $20,000, $30,000 extra dollars. Yeah, $30,000 extra dollars. So well done. We compete well off the court too. Thank you. But I have some good news on that front. And the good news is that a number of alums, before we've even kicked off the campaign, have already pledged their support. And we've already got pledges totaling almost $300,000 of the $1 million. So a big thank you to a range of alums. So Batty Lucas, class of 83, John Phelps, class of 90, my wife Kate, 92, and I. J.P. Gallagher, who is a class of 93 and an old friend of Morgan's, who is not here tonight. He's not a rider of the van, but he's an alum and was a dear friend of Morgan's. Bryce Dakin, class of 95, David Newton, class of 96, and Scott Birdwell, class of 98, have already happily put their hand up and said, count me in, I'm in to support the program over the next 5 years.